Welcome to Priceless Takes.
And we are live from Brisbane, Australia. Welcome back, everyone, to Priceless Takes, episode 69. We are filming here in the morning for you in Australia. And once again, Chris Malik joining me for Championship Predictions Week. Chris, I'm sure you were feeling quite happy overall after this weekend of football. Can you talk a bit more about that, please?
Look, it's always good to get the win, but I think for my Eagles, there's a lot of concerns coming through, particularly with Jake Elliott and his inability to make field goals and extra points. And on the AFC side of the things, I think the Chiefs look weak, which is good for everyone.
Yeah, listen, I'm gonna be honest, I'm still quite heartbroken by my Ravens. That was a very tough pill to swallow in the way that game ended. But Chris, that is where we are going to start because it was heartbreak in Buffalo for the Ravens as Mark Andrews drops the Ravens season away on the game-tying two-point conversion. Buffalo advances to Kansas City, winning 27-25. Now listen, say what you want about Lamar. The stats are here for you, Chris. I'll hand it over to you. He's 18 of 25 for 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, but two very, very costly. Maybe some will think costly, others maybe won't. Turnovers in the first half, 1 pick, 1 fumble. Derrick Henry had 16 carries for 84 yards and a touchdown. On the other side, Josh Allen threw for 127 yards, 0 touchdowns, but he had 2 rushing touchdowns. Chris, what is the biggest reason the Ravens lost in this game?
I think it comes down to exactly what I told you last week, Luka, and that was that in tough games like this, where the teams are so tightly matched up, each small moment can get amplified and become potentially game-changing. And that came down to these fumbles. And that was not just Lamar being a bit short there. It was Mark Andrews fumbling the ball twice, not once. But honestly, I think those withstanding, the biggest thing this comes down to is Jim Harbaugh not sticking to the game plan. And we
John,
both, John,
sorry to correct you. Yeah.
we both discussed how how dominant Derrick Henry is and how he would play a large part in them winning. And frankly, they did not run the ball enough, and they didn't give him enough carries. Now, when Derrick Henry carries the ball for 20 or more times, he's 9-0. The team is 9-0. How many times did they carry the ball last game, Luka?
16
times. And they just couldn't get him the ball. And that comes down to coaching. Not only that, it's not like the run wasn't working. It was obviously colder, right? And we both agreed that would make more sense for them to run the ball more, but apparently not. And we did see Justice Hill had a lot of really good runs, and so did Derrick Henry when he had the ball. And I think that's what this game came down to, is they ran away from what they were doing the entire season, and that's why they came up short.
Yeah, Chris, listen, there's a lot for me here. But more specifically, I want to get from you, how do you think Lamar played in this game? Because have been quite critical of Lamar in his past and how he hasn't been able to perform in the playoffs. Obviously, he had the 2 turnovers, but he also did a lot of good things in this game, I thought at least. How do you judge his performance?
Look, Luca, I texted you when he had if I had Twitter or X, I would have tweeted at you, honestly, because the moment that he had that the first fumble within the first half, or the second turnover, the game was over. The game was pretty much over. And that's when that contributes to small little things like giving up a touchdown to go down 21-10 in the dying moments of the first half. Those are when these things come into play. And I think he played excellently in the second half, but you can't go missing. You can't do a CJ Stroud and go missing in the first half. That's essentially what it came down to. So I think when it comes down to the box score, it didn't look like Lamar was that bad. But when you look at it from a perspective of play by play and half by half, he wasn't amazing. And you know what the interesting thing is? He came out roaring in the first drive,
Well,
and
that's
they
what I
brought
mean.
down the field.
He wasn't that quiet in the first half. He still, put an opening drive touchdown on the board, and they still got a field goal, which was still a good drive after later in that first half. It wasn't
But
complete CJ mode.
it wasn't complete CJ mode, but it wasn't complete Lamar mode, and I think that's what it gets down to is that we didn't see Lamar be Lamar throughout the whole game. It's not enough to be Lamar just through one half. So I think look, I don't think this whole blame pie goes on Lamar, but then again, there was a certain couple plays where that 2 point conversion that they tried to do initially when they were down by 2 points, 21-19, they definitely should have handed that off to Derrick Henry. The next couple plays where they were in the red zone, they had 3 goes. They definitely should have handed that off to Derrick Henry. Instead, the ball gets deflected, you take a sack, and you lose more yards and you have to pass again. So when Lamar doesn't show up in those points, you rely on Derrick Henry, and they decided not to just rely on Derrick Henry, and there was no real pathway for them to win. So I think in that first half, he had those 2 turnovers. It was pretty much over.
Yeah, look, like I said, I'm still in a bit of disbelief, Chris, from this game. There are a lot of thoughts that I do have on this game overall. Firstly, I want to address what you said about the 2 point conversion, and a better thing you could have done, maybe not better in some people's eyes, but more effective, is, I don't know, maybe have a designed run for Lamar, who the whole week, Chris, I said to you, when Lamar runs the ball effectively,
Yep.
this Ravens team is unbeatable. Now,
Yep.
in this game, he did have, I should have had this on my stat sheet. I'm pretty sure he had 6.5 yards per carry, and I
He
think
didn't have a single designed run in the entire game.
I know he didn't have a single. I'm pretty sure he was 6 for 39 yards. I think that's off the top of my head what he was. Maybe you can fact check that for me, Chris, while I go on here. But listen, this is what we talk about when it comes to game planning, and this is why I have a lot on the coach too, Chris, is we saw that the Bills had a game plan, okay? They were going to stop the run early. They weren't going to put Josh Allen in a position where he was making mistakes. He was getting the ball out quickly. And he was allowing the run for the Bills to open up. And we saw the Bills' rushing attack be very effective, and I think that's because there was a lot of
You would be
pressure.
correct on the 6 for 39, by the way.
Yeah, so 6 for 39. Look, he had 88 yards in that first game against Pittsburgh, and there were so many times where we just saw him carry the ball, okay, direct snap, bang, run in behind the right tackle, in behind the right guard, and get yards. And that just didn't happen at all in this game for them. And I'm just thinking, why? Why does that not happen? It's your most important spot of the season. And when he scrambled, he was getting 6.5 or 6.9 yards per carry. He was making plays when he had the ball. And that's
Luka,
just what I don't get.
I think what it comes down to is what exactly I was telling you the entire last week, that the Ravens were going to go into Ravens playoff form of recent, and that's exactly what they did. But you didn't want to believe me, so now you can believe me. They're in Cancun right now, okay? And maybe it's more of a coaching thing than anything, because they definitely deviated from their game plan that they've been applying for the last 18 weeks, 19 weeks, So yeah, I don't know. I think there's a lot of questions there. Mark, you shouldn't have to rely on a 2 point conversion of Mark Andrews catching a pass in the cold. We both agreed that if you're in the cold, you're probably going to have to run the ball more. And they were absent from that.
That ball also hit him flat in the chest. It hit him in the chest.
But
have you seen, there is the literal photo of him, I can't really show you my chest now, but he has the ball. He literally has caught, the ball is caught, and all he needs to do is fall down because he's in the end zone.
Here's the other thing. That catch does not win them the game. That catch only ties it. So putting so much blame on Mark Andrews is one thing. Maybe it's like we should run the ball because it's cold. The ball's slippery.
Yes, but in saying that, I do agree with you, but I think at the end of the day, an open catch is an open catch. and they get paid the big bucks, okay, to make those plays. The one thing I will say, Chris, and you haven't talked about it yet, something that you were very right about was the weather conditions, because I think when it comes to those mistakes as well, with the drop, with the Mark Andrews fumble, with the Lamar fumble, I think the cold weather and the slippery ball did definitely play a part in that, and that is something that I will give you credit for, because you definitely, in your analysis pre-game, talked about the elements and how that would play a factor, and I was very dismissive of that. But I'll let you talk, but I do want to say something else about what you're saying with the 2-point conversion once you're done.
Look, it definitely played a factor. The weather was nothing to grin at, and regardless of what you were saying about Lamar's record in the cold, it's completely different when you're in a playoff game. You're away, you're playing a big game, reputation on the line, and the weather aspect actually showed up in the Eagles game as well, if we want to just refer to that very briefly.
Yeah.
They didn't pass the ball. They ran the ball. They stuck to the game plan, and they used their 2,000-yard rusher, and they got the job done. And that's exactly what was missing from this game. And frankly, I was a bit tuned out by the first half, because I'm like, what is even going on? This game is not as good as it's meant to be, because both teams are not playing up to their potential. Whereas the Bills were kind of playing down to the level of the Ravens. They let this game get close in a couple moments, but there was never really a moment of a doubt where you're like, all right, this game could really flip. Because
I think the Ravens defense locked in that second half. I don't think it was the Bills playing down to the Ravens. They held the Bills to 2 field goals in the second half, Chris. I think that was a big moment in the game, and I still don't think you can disregard the Mark Andrews fumble, because I guess I thought in this moment they looked like they were going to be in control, okay?
Well,
the Bills
fumble, because there were 2 of them.
The Mark Andrews fumble, right? So Lamar has gone down.
The Bills in the fourth quarter.
No, Mark Andrews.
Yes, he had 2. So there was one where they were where they were.
I'm just talking about the fumble lost specifically.
The final one. Yes. Okay.
I'm just talking about the fumble lost. The Bills had 2 punts in their first 2 drives. Okay. The Ravens went field goal, then they went touchdown, then Buffalo went field goal.
No, Luka. On the Bills' first drive,
of the second half.
Okay, yes.
So second half, the Bills' drives were punt and punt to start with, okay? The Ravens went field goal, touchdown, then Buffalo went field goal, okay? The Ravens have the ball, this is on the Mark Andrews fumble, 19-24. Okay, so if they go and score a touchdown, okay, even if they don't get the 2-point conversion, okay, they're still up in this game, okay? And this is a similar thing I was saying, Chris, is why it's the timing. Not all turnovers are created equally, because I said the exact same thing in the Baker Mayfield game with Jaden Daniels, where you cost yourself the timing, because if the Ravens go down, okay, and they score a touchdown, or even if they score a field goal, okay, and then it's 22-24, then you're giving Buffalo the ball with 6 minutes, with 5 minutes left. And in all likelihood, if you're the Ravens, then you're getting the ball back with 1:30 to go, with 1:20 to go, to give yourself a chance to go and win that ball game. But because you have that fumble in a costly spot, you lose the possession, and the timing is all messed up. And then you don't even have, like, now you're going for a do or die 2-point conversion. It didn't have to be that way, Chris. It didn't have to be a do or die 2-point conversion.
I completely agree. And the other thing is, it didn't have to be as close as it was, in the sense that if they cleaned up their game. They also had a couple of really costly penalties.
I personally think that pass interference play on Keon Coleman, I personally think that was a no call. That's just me. That put 7 points on the board right there for the Bills.
Sure, that was a bit of battle, but notwithstanding that, there were a couple other really silly penalties that the Ravens have been getting all year, and which admittedly I expected them to clean up on. You just can't look. End of the day, you just can't win a game with 4 turnovers, a playoff game with serious consequences away.
Yeah, listen. In terms of the actual turnovers, this is where I have my problem, because I feel like that Jalen Hurts fumble cost the Eagles in that Super Bowl, because he had a clean game, okay, But then that fumble was what gave the extra score to Kansas City. And when the game comes down to 3 points, you know, you look at that play and you're like, oh, well, if Jalen Hurts didn't make that play, then, you know, the Eagles could be Super Bowl champions. And my problem is I recognize that Lamar fumble, it put 7 points on the board for the Bills. And you can say that in the end cost them the game. But Chris, I still think that in the moments where Lamar had to have it, okay, he performed. He led that 8-play, 88-yard touchdown drive, and we've never seen Lamar do that before in the playoffs.
He had to have it the whole game. He had to have it the whole game.
Well, you can say that, but in reality, Chris, okay, if for what I'm gonna go hypothetical here, but in reality, Lamar leads in that 88-yard touchdown drive, okay. Mark Andrews gets the 2-point conversion, and the Ravens win in overtime, okay?
Or the Bills could win in overtime.
But they could. But I'm just saying, if the Ravens go on to win this game, okay, we are not having this same conversation about Lamar had to have it the entire game and those turnovers cost them, because we're saying Lamar led an 88-yard touchdown drive which tied the game up, and if that hadn't have happened, the Ravens wouldn't have been in a position to win the game.
Luka, how much of the blame pie are you giving to Lamar?
How much of the blame pie am I giving to Lamar? I'm giving Lamar 25% of the blame pie.
Sure, I agree with that.
I'm giving him 25% of the blame pie.
But I'm really interested to see your Bills and Chiefs, how you think Josh is going to show up in that. So if we could...
Me too. Yeah, listen, I am going to go to that. I just want to show this last photo. I said I'm going to attempt to share my screen. We'll see if this works or not. I just can't get over this, Chris. I just can't get over this. Can you see that? Can you see this, Chris?
Yep, I can see it.
Like, what in Mark Andrews' right mind is he doing going backwards in this photo, Chris? He's just caught the ball. He could probably get another, 3 or 4 yards if he goes forward and dives on the ground. And he decides to go backwards. That's something I just cannot understand.
He might be a bit of a unique player. I think he was just having a bad day, honestly.
I just don't get that, Chris. In a playoff game, I think he tried to be the hero, if I'm being honest with you. And I don't know, I think he was maybe trying to come around here and try go up the sideline. But you're Mark Andrews, man. You're not Xavier Worthy or Tyreek Hill, doing that stuff. Get down, and then you put your team in a position to win the game. I just can't get over that when it comes to a playoff game, when it comes to the small margins we talk about, Chris, when it comes to winning and losing playoff games. But, Chris, I still have a lot more faith in Lamar after this game, is what I will say. And I think it's definitely a step in the right direction for Lamar and for the Ravens, because I think we can agree that we have seen continuous improvement from Lamar in these playoffs. Obviously, he still needs to get better in moments and playing consistently for the entire game. But I think we've seen things from Lamar in this playoff run that we haven't seen from him in previous playoff runs that people have criticized him for.
Sure. I still think he needs something to show up with, so... we'll see.
Listen, fair enough, Chris. Well, listen, we are going to move on to the Bills and Chiefs AFC Championship game. We are doing a shorter episode today for you guys, so I do have to go a bit early. I have a busy day today. I'm catching flights, doing some business trips, hopefully maybe getting a sponsor or two for the show. We'll see how we go. But, Chris, after this game, funnily enough, before the Bills-Ravens game, the Bills were actually odds-on favourites by about 2 cents against the Chiefs. After the Bills and Ravens game, Chris, the Chiefs open as 1.5-point favourites in their 7th consecutive AFC Championship game, Chris. Let me say that to you again. 7 consecutive AFC Championship games.
That's Brady-esque. Brady-esque,
they are
honestly.
4-2 all time. All of them except for last year were at Arrowhead. Now, Chris, a tale of two stories. Josh Allen, 4-1 against Mahomes in the regular season, 0-3 against him in the playoffs. There's a lot going on, Chris. We have a lot in the divisional round last year. Mahomes only had 177 yards in that game last year. Kelsey had 117 receiving yards and a touchdown. The Bills this year, they're the only healthy team to beat. The only team to beat a healthy Kansas City team. That was 30-21 in Buffalo. Mahomes had 2 interceptions that game. Kelsey had 2 receptions for 8 yards. We saw what Kelsey did last week. He had an absolute game. And sorry, Chris, to correct myself, that 177 yards last week and 117 for Kelsey was in the divisional round last week, not
Correct.
the divisional round against the Bills last year. That's my mistake. Chris, what are your thoughts on this game? Did the Bills make you think differently in this game from their performance on the weekend?
Luka, I don't think the Bills made me feel differently about anything on the weekend. Do you want to know why?
Why?
Because I always had the Bills winning this game. I always had the Bills taking the Super Bowl, regardless of who was on the other side. Whether it be the Texans, the Chiefs, wherever it was. The Bills were going to take this game out. And let me tell you why. The Chiefs, despite their record, despite their games they just played, just don't look the same. You do the eye test, and I'm sure you can tell me as well, they don't look the same. Okay? Regardless of who you got on the offensive end, regardless of who you got on the defensive end, that magic just isn't there this time. And, we have a lot of people talking about, especially people in the Texans saying, oh, we knew the game was going to be against us, blah, 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 this or that. Let's ignore that for a second. Let's just look at how Mahomes has had this year compared to his previous years. Statistically, this has been one of his worst years of all time. And also, going against the Bills, we always know these are tough games. And even in the game that they just played, it looked like not only was it a clutch play from Josh Allen, but at the game that he's coming off of and going into this game, I think he has a lot more to prove in getting over this Chiefs hill that a lot of teams have tried to get over. So, do I think that my opinion has changed or concerned? No, because simply off the eye test, I think the Bills just have that X factor to beat the Chiefs. And I think the Chiefs have had too many close games, too many tight moments, which is great practice for coming in and winning in those high-pressure moments. But I do think that it's time, it's going to happen, and the Bills are going to beat the Chiefs. And not only that, I think that Josh Allen's rushing game has gotten better. And so I think in the last playoff win, I see that Allen has gone for 72 rushing yards. I see that this could go for 100, honestly. And the other thing,
which game are you talking about? With the divisional round last year against the Chiefs? Is that the game you're talking about for 72?
Yeah.
Okay, because he only had 20 last week against the Ravens. So
no, I meant the last one.
Yeah. Well, do you think that last week only having 20 yards will affect him in this game at all?
I don't think so. I think the thing is the Ravens defense is a bit different in the sense that their rushing defense is obviously they got bigger boys up there, which you talked about, but I don't think it really made a difference. I think Josh Allen was conserving for this round, if this makes sense. Because at halftime, it was pretty obvious that the game, the way that the game was going to play out was completely different, and I think that did change their game plan a bit. So yeah, I'm taking the Bills here, but I'm really interested in what you think. Do you think Mahomes is going to show up? I want to note that I did say that if Kelsey doesn't have a good game,
I was going to ask you that. Yeah.
If Kelsey doesn't have a good game, it's not going to bode well.
You said the Chiefs were finished, Chris, if I can quote you on that, because I remember that clearly. He had 117 yards and an anytime touchdown scorer, which somebody did predict, I must say. DeAndre Hopkins, not so much, but Travis Kelce, hope someone wants some money on the weekend from that. But yeah, what are your thoughts on his performance and how that goes in for this game, Chris? He had 5 receptions for 75 yards last year in the divisional round against the Bills.
Oh, I think he was extremely dominant. It looked like he could do whatever he wanted. But I think this Bills defense can show up when it really matters. See, I didn't really take the Texans as a serious team. I know you had them in an upset, and they did pull that off before, but I don't know. I just couldn't get to feeling that the Texans were a serious team in terms of their pass defense.
Yeah. Listen, well, I'll tell you what I think, and then we can go to a score prediction before we get into the NFC Championship game. I think that last week, Josh Allen and the Bills, I think their game plan, at least their plan A game plan, was centered around the fact that if they're patient and if they protect the ball, that Baltimore is going to turn the ball over. And that's exactly what happened. And that's why when you look at that game, the Bills won the turnover battle 3-0, and that ended up resulting in them winning. I don't think Kansas City is going to just give you the ball. They're not going to give you the ball.
Yeah,
Mahomes
definitely. You're going to have to capitalize on every possession
they're
you
not,
get.
but and this is the thing, is I honestly wasn't actually that impressed by the Bills last week. I thought they made plays when they had to, but because the Ravens gave them a lot of legs up, I don't think we really saw the Bills under an extreme amount of pressure. And I think, which is why I would have liked to have seen that Mark Andrews fumble, because if they had have gone down in the fourth quarter, I would have wanted to see what Josh Allen would have done. Now, in the past, every time Josh Allen has done something, Mahomes has an answer in the playoffs, okay? And in the end, Mahomes has always been the one who's had the ball at the end of the game, okay? And that's what the games have come down to, is who has the ball last. I'm interested to see what your score prediction is, Chris, but I just don't know if the Bills have enough, where I think they are still going to be reliant on Kansas City turnovers, and turnovers I don't think that they're going to get. Meanwhile, Chris, they did get it last year. McCole Hardman I think it was McCole Hardman had that fumble at the end of the game, which would have put the Chiefs up by 10 points in that game. And he had that fumble in the end zone, which gave the Bills back with a chance to go on with it.
Luka, do you think that Patrick Mahomes played a good game last week?
I saw a lot of good plays from Mahomes. That touchdown to Travis Kelce was unbelievable in the end zone.
Look
and
at the
I
box
don't.
score. 16 for
All
25,
I know is
177 yards.
Mahomes did what he needed to do to win. Okay, and when you have a defense as good as Kansas City's is, and I think, Chris, I was more impressed by Mahomes than I was by Josh Allen this past weekend. I did not think Josh Allen had that good of a game.
Sure, but you could apply the same argument you just had, that he did what he needed to win, to Josh Allen.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yes, I completely agree with that. I think, Josh Allen did do what he needed to do to win, which is why I don't know why you seem to have more confidence with Josh Allen in this game compared to Mahomes, when he's been here 7 straight times, six at home, okay? He's beaten Josh Allen 3 straight times in the playoffs, okay? And it's in Kansas City again. Why do you have more confidence in Josh Allen based on this past weekend?
Because Josh Allen has had an MVP season, whereas Patrick Mahomes has one of his worst. He's had the lowest passing yards. He's had one of the worst passer ratings, notwithstanding last year, and he's thrown the least amount of touchdowns.
And what was their record this season?
Sure, but those games came down to the last minute. And what I'm telling you is, in this situation, the game may come down to the last minute, or conversely, you just may not bring enough firepower. I think that with Mahomes here is, he didn't have the big game. Look, the Texans outgained them. Okay? In terms of yards.
And the Ravens outgained the Bills.
Sure, but I'm saying when it comes down to specifically Mahomes and the Chiefs, you need him. Like we talk about peaking at the right time, you need him to peak. You don't want to squeak out these games. It's not a good sign. Okay? Especially towards the end of the season. And what I'm saying here is, look, it's very possible Mahomes could go and have a Mahomes game and do 300 yards, 300 touchdowns. Very within his grip. But I'm saying I don't have much faith in that happening, because he's squeaking out these playoff games.
Look, they still won by 9 points. That's not squeaking out a playoff game. That's a 2-score game.
Luka,
Like
but they were
the
pointing,
Chiefs were, but the Chiefs were in control of that game, Chris. I think the Chiefs were way
do
more.
you really feel the Chiefs were in control the whole time? Because I felt there were certainly some moments where, like, okay, the Texans could really make a run here.
Nah, I thought the Chiefs were in control the entire time, especially in the second half. Chris, and the defense tightened up. Like
Sure,
the Chiefs defense played great in the second half, whereas I saw the Bills defense allow some serious points to the Ravens in that second half. And they did create the turnovers, yes, but Baltimore, and you can say whatever you want about the Bills changing their game plan, but I don't think that's how it works in the playoffs. Baltimore dominated that Buffalo defense in the second half, and I saw Kansas City's defense lock down Houston in the second half of that football game.
there were points at which the game was 12-13 in the third quarter after Joe Mixon's touchdown run. So it wasn't like absolute domination, and that's really what I want to see from Patrick Mahomes for me to personally to put his full faith in him, because I haven't seen that happen this season. Whereas Josh Allen, I've seen him take over plenty of times, and he's had that domination. So that's my backing, and that's where I'm taking. So I think Vegas is wrong on this. I think Vegas is probably coming at this from the fact that they're coming off a back-to-back championship. They always win the AFC Championship. They always get there mostly, and they win it. So they always get there, and they mostly win it 4-2. So yeah, look, I'm curious to see what you think, what kind of impact Hollywood Brown's going to have here.
Look, I'm interested more about Xavier Worthy, actually, than Hollywood Brown.
Really?
I think that they've been really trying to get him going all season, and we saw last year how MVS played a huge role for the Chiefs in that Super Bowl run after he had his fair share of shortcomings in the regular season. And we've seen them do so many things. We saw that 3rd and 2 against the Raiders where they threw a deep ball to Xavier Worthy, and we were just like, what the hell are you guys doing? It's a 3rd and 2. If the Raiders go back and score a touchdown, you guys are going to lose the game. And they still threw it. And I think that in a playoff game like this, I'm expecting something big from Xavier Worthy and the deep ball, and I think the Chiefs have worked all season for a moment like this, trying to get him involved in the offense. I expect a lot from Hollywood Brown too, but I think for me, this is a Xavier Worthy and Travis Kelce game for my liking. Okay, Travis Kelce's going to do what he does. I expect Xavier Worthy to have the big game. But I just think, Chris, I still will fight you back. I still think the Chiefs in all of their games this season, really, we've seen them, except for the Bills game, but we've seen it with the Bills before in the regular season. They are still in control. And I get what you're saying, they were 12-13 against the Texans, but they went and scored a touchdown as soon as the Texans put the game to 12-13. So the Chiefs are still in control of that game. Chris, I said to you last week on the podcast, I said that no matter what happens in the Bills and the Ravens game, that I will have the winner of that game beating the Chiefs. And I'm here to tell you, Chris, that after watching the Bills this weekend, I'm changing my mind. And
so what's your score?
My score prediction, Chris, I think this game could go a number of different ways, but I'm going off history, Chris, and last year, 8 of the first 9 drives in the divisional game were scoring drives. I have this game 31-30 to the Bills, to the Chiefs. 31-30. So I would take the Bills plus. I would take the Bills plus 1.5. I will say, Chris, I was nearly spot on with my Bills Ravens score prediction. It just was the wrong way around.
Right.
I was one point off there in the snow. I'm expecting a high scoring game, and I'm expecting a clash of the Titans
Luka,
in this game. Despite what I said about Josh Allen, I expect a big game from both the QBs.
If you want to talk about predictions and we talk about the Commanders-Lions game, I told you that the Commanders would have to score 38 points to win.
Yes.
The point at which they scored 38 points was when they basically won.
Yes.
It was considered a win.
I did. I was watching that game, and I saw that, and I said, that.
So I'm actually
good.
I think this is going to be the tale of two defenses.
Okay.
So I'm going to take the Bills 19-17 here. So I also consider that the game could go two different ways, where it could just become a pure shootout and who has the ball lost sort of wins. But I think that it's going to be a gritty game. It's probably going to be really cold. I haven't checked the weather, but it's probably going to be really cold. And I think I think they're going to try and score on every single possession they can. It's going to be tough. I don't actually expect many turnovers here. I think it's going to be whoever can score because both defenses are kind of showing up right now.
I just think, Chris, that I think we're going to see these QBs, both of them. I think they're going to play in a mode where they are going to have to be desperate, and I think we haven't seen that this season. And I think
Yeah.
we've seen some classics between these two. And I talk about Lamar being motivated. Now Josh Allen is extremely motivated. He has the whole NFL world behind him, except for that small little dot in Missouri. So we'll see what happens, Chris. But two very different score predictions. I do agree. We're going to move on to the NFC Championship game, Chris, and I
Mm-hmm.
apologise for not keeping time because we have gone a bit over time. But, Chris, Eagles, 5.5 point favourites at home. They split the division 1-1 this year against the Commanders. Now, Jaden Daniels was 6 touchdowns, 3 interceptions in the two matchups this season, with the Commanders averaging 103 yards on the ground. Jaden Daniels also had 81 rush yards in week 6. Now, in saying that, Chris, Saquon averages 146 yards per game against the Commanders, who still have a questionable run defense, but their offense is flying so high, it is making up for it. Now, Jalen Hurts only played in one game against the Commanders. It was the first game. He had through for 221 yards, 0 touchdowns, 0 picks, 40 rushing yards, and a rushing touchdown. But, Chris, the story of this game, Jalen Hurts' health going into this football game. You're the Eagles guy, Chris. What did you see on the weekend briefly in the Rams game? What do you think about Jalen Hurts and his health right now and how it pertains to the success for the Eagles in this game?
Okay, I think there were a lot of late hits. Just objectively, there were a lot of late hits on the quarterback that did not get called, which was a bit disappointing. But he did take a really big sack. Maybe if it was a different quarterback, might have been unnecessary roughness. But there was a point where he folded and his knee sort of hyperextended, and it honestly, I thought he had a serious injury, and maybe he has. It's at the point of the season where they just play through it. But from his post-game interview, he was pretty giddy. He was pretty elated. So I would think they gave him some kind of drugs. But look, he's a strong guy. He has a lot of muscle mass. He's one of the stronger quarterbacks in terms of his legs. So I think that's going to help his recovery. I think he's going to have a decent time to rest. I haven't checked the practice reports. I think those would be worth looking at as well. Honestly, I did see like you're probably thinking that there was a noticeable change of play afterwards, and there was. He did sort of stop
Yes, that's
scrambling,
exactly
stop
what I'm
moving.
thinking.
But I don't think that's going to be the story of this game. I think the story of this game is going to be, can the Commanders stop Saquon Barkley? And answer is, I don't think so. I don't think anyone can stop Saquon Barkley behind this offensive line. Despite that, he did take a lot of sacks, and I think that might have actually come down to, believe it or not, the snow. Because I think the snowiest game all weekend was definitely the Eagles game. I honestly think it was pretty hard for him to see anything. I think that's what it comes down to. He's probably holding the ball for too long. Couple of them, sure, the offensive line collapsed, but Jared Verse was definitely the best defensive lineman in this game, apart from the baby Rhino, Jalen Carter. I would give him the second most the second most credit behind Saquon Barkley. Jalen Carter is the story of that game. He saved their game, saved them on that final drive, and I think that's what it's going to come down to. Those final 2 plays, I think that's essentially what's going to come through in this Commanders game. The Commanders are not going to be able to deal with the Eagles defense, and I think, sure, you can bring up the point in the last game where they did play the Eagles defense, and they scored 36 points on them, but I think that was a one-off. I think this team's peaking.
And that was the
exactly at
game
the right
where
time.
they had Kenny Pickett in that game too.
Right,
so
right. But
psychologically,
yeah.
I think that also
Yeah.
I think plays a part. And also, Chris, that game was in Washington, whereas we are in Philly for this game.
We're in Philly. It's going to be cold. It's not going to be in the heated surrounds of Ford Field. So indoor. It's going to be outdoors. It's going to be a tough game. I think the Eagles generally have a pretty good record on the Commanders. I think they should come away with this one. I think everything should be all right. The only thing is Jalen Hurts healthy? I think he'll definitely recover better because he's got so much muscle strength in that particular area. If it was Jaden Daniels, then I'd be more concerned him sustaining that same injury. But it's also worth noting Jalen Hurts has had this injury a couple times before on that same knee. There's an argument of does he know how to recover from the injury, or is him hurting that same knee again worse? We're gonna have to see, but I think we'll certainly very quickly find out within the first couple of drives whether it's gonna have an effect or not.
Chris, so do you think that you have the Eagles winning just like either way, like a healthy Jalen Hurts or a not healthy Jalen Hurts?
I have the Eagles winning either way, simply coming down to the defense. I think the defense is too unbearable. I think what happened last game for the Commanders was the Lions were just, they just weren't there. The defense was not there. They couldn't come up with a stop. They couldn't really do anything. Of course, the 4 interceptions does not help, but I think the defense was the tail of that game, and it just didn't happen. I think it's going to show up here.
And we talked about the Lions defense, Chris. We were asking the question, was it a fluke or were they back? And clearly it was a fluke with that Sam Darnold game because Jaden Daniels just lit them up. And so he completely lit them up. I think Jalen Hurts, I think that the way the Commanders are rolling, they are very hot right now, and I think we're going to need to see Jalen Hurts throw the ball in some capacity in order for them to win this game. But Chris, I do agree with you. I'm riding with Saquon because he is just that good. He had another 200-yard game last week, 7.9 yards per carry. The Commanders did give up 7.5 yards per carry to Jahmyr Gibbs in the loss, and Saquon has dominated the Commanders this year. Now, I just wonder, will this be the defense that finally forces Jalen Hurts to throw the ball? Because they didn't really force Jalen Hurts to throw the ball in that many spots, Chris. But I think the knee injury is certainly going to play a factor because Jalen Hurts is a dual threat quarterback. And if his escapability is not a factor in this game, I think that makes it a lot easier for the Commanders and their defense to play in this game because they can really load the box and they're going to say, what's Jalen Hurts going to do? Run? No, he's not going to run, which is why I think the knee is so critical. We saw that 44-yard touchdown at the very start of the Eagles game, Chris, that really got the Eagles offense ignited, and that was really, I think, a big confidence booster for Jalen Hurts.
And look,
Chris, the one thing Go on, because I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here before we wrap up, so
I just want to add one thing. The other thing to note is, for some reason, A.J. Brown has really disappeared. He has disappeared. He's had a lot of drops, and I think the pressure is really mounting. I think if this might be an A.J. Brown prove-it game, for all I know. I know I've said it for the last 2 games. I just think something's coming, and with this combination of his injury, he might not be able to run. He only has to pass. I think A.J. Brown really has to show up. And that, in combination with Saquon, could hurt them. I just think Jake Elliott needs to make his field goals as well. That's kind of just basic stuff.
Yeah. Well, listen. Well, AJ Brown won't be able to show up if he doesn't get the ball thrown to him. I will say that much. And AJ Brown, at least I think, is...
He had 7. He only completed 2.
Yeah. Yeah, what was he? I think 2 for 14 or 2 for 10.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I don't know.
Anyways, go on.
AJ Brown is a question mark for me. But, Chris, I just cannot get over, and he keeps on getting away with it, and I don't know if it's Saquon. I don't know if he does so many other good things that he gets away with it, and we only just focus on the bad stuff. But I just cannot get over Nick Sirianni and some of his decision-making in this game. Because when you have an injured quarterback, what do you do with Jalen Hurts? You make him drop back. He takes a safety, which if the Rams go on to win this game by 1 point, Chris, you know what play we are looking back at? We are looking back at the 2 points that Philadelphia gave up on a safety, and we are saying, Nick Sirianni, why are you allowing your injured quarterback to drop back 10 yards and throw the ball in the end zone when your offensive line was getting killed the entire
Luka,
game?
I'm not sure it was 10 yards. It was pretty much.
It was a big drop back. I'm still handing the ball to Saquon Barkley in that spot, okay? You know when else I'm handing the ball to Saquon Barkley? When there's 2 minutes 40 to go and you're 2nd and 7, and this is one of the most important plays of your season, because if you continue this drive, you might not even give the Rams a chance to even respond and put points on the board. You run your injured quarterback on a bootleg, okay, and he gets sacked for 12 yards when you have your 2,000-yard rusher, Chris, who what I hear is the Ravens didn't hand the ball to Derrick Henry, okay? If the Eagles lose this game, we are looking back at that play when Jalen Hurts eats up a 12-yard sack, saying, why did you not give the ball to Saquon on 2nd and 7, and why would you then have not given the ball to him again on likely a 3rd and short?
If you want to talk about question calls, there was also one call, I don't know the exact moment, but there was a really critical play where it was 3rd and maybe 7 or 3rd and 10 or 12 or something, and they just ran the ball, and it was obvious it was not going to happen, and you hear boos, you hear boos from the stadium because you simply can't pick up 12 yards in a run casually. So I completely agree with you. There's some places where he really needs to clean up if he wants to go anywhere.
I just think in critical moments of the game, I think he was trying to prove to everyone, Jalen Hurts isn't hurt. He can still throw the ball. But in that game, you just needed to focus on winning, because if you win that game, you want Jalen Hurts to be as healthy as possible. And in those moments, you didn't need to make Jalen Hurts throw the ball. And I just can't trust Nick Sirianni. But I still think, Chris, I'm going to give you my score prediction because I just think that Saquon is just that good. He is that good. And we saw a Super Bowl rematch last year, Chris. I think we're going to see a Super Bowl rematch this year. I'm giving the Eagles to just cover the points in a low score. It's a mid-scoring game, actually. I think the Eagles defense is going to play well. I had this game 27-21. Chris, we really do have to go. We really do have to go. So give me your last thoughts and your score prediction.
I will be taking the Eagles 25-14. I don't think it's going to be a
wow.
I don't think I think Jaden Daniels is due for a bad performance.
So you're kind of giving what I sort of thought last week with Detroit.
Yeah, I just think Jaden Daniels, look, he's had a glorious run. He's done well, rookie quarterback. The story's been great. But now you're playing with the big boys, okay? These are the kings of the NFC East. They've owned the Commanders for a little bit of a while. I don't think he's coming up in this moment. I think Dan Quinn is going to step on himself going to shoot himself in the foot just like Dan Campbell did last week. These fourth down this fourth down aggression is going to come back to bite them. And so, I've got the Eagles winning, but this is basically contingent on them cleaning up really silly stuff. There was a couple completions last week where Lane Johnson or one of the other linemen had a false start. And so we need to clean that up. We also need to clean up Jake Elliott. I think Jake Elliott's going to be a huge part of this game. He needs to finish the extra points. He needs to get the extra points.
Yeah, listen, I agree, Chris. We've seen one rookie quarterback go into the link, and he didn't last very long. That quarterback was Brock Purdy, and the Eagles went on to win that NFC Championship game. We're seeing another rookie quarterback coming into the link with a chance to go to the Super Bowl, and I think that it's going to have the same outcome with a Philadelphia win. But we will be back after Championship weekend discussing all the things that happen from the weekend in football. And then we will also do a mini Super Bowl preview as well as addressing some of the hires that have happened. Chris, I will get a quick scale of 1 to 10. Very quick, 1 to 10 on the Ben Johnson hire. And also, Chris, I don't know if you read this morning, but Aaron Glenn hired as the New York Jets next head coach. Can you give me a quick 1 to 10 on those two hires, and then we will go?
I'm not liking it. I'm
Okay.
all in on this move. I'm all in. This is a brilliant move. And the other thing is, if you watch the clips of Ben Johnson going into the Bears office, he was extremely excited. Okay, I think this is a huge loss for Detroit, especially in the interdivision. I think Caleb Williams, new coach, new quarterback. I think this is perfect for the quarterback-coach connection. I think they're both going to flourish together. I think Caleb Williams in college as well displayed that sort of aggressive attitude in running, scrambling, making crazy passes, crazy plays. I think Ben Johnson perfectly suits him. As for Aaron Glenn, I think that's honestly really great for the organization. He's he was the Detroit's defensive coordinator, correct? Yep.
Yes.
Right? Yes. So I think he's excellent there. I think Aaron Glenn actually did a lot with what he had. He was missing a lot of pieces. He did extremely well. But I don't think any of this has bearing on the Jets until they figure out their Aaron Rodgers situation. So great hire, but we already know how it went with the defensive coach. You had a better defensive coach at Robert Saleh, who was doing well with the Jets defensive coach. So good hire, but seems like a bit of a parallel move.
Yeah, look, I agree with the Jets. I think good hire, but the offense is more the concern for me. The Bears, I love Ben Johnson, I think, as a football mind. I don't know about him as a man motivator, but I think we saw maybe his man motivation sort of get outshined because Dan Campbell is such a strong personality in the Detroit locker room. We never really hear
that personality rubs off. That's important to note. That
I agree.
Does rub off. And if you notice his first speech, he's exuding a bit of that aura.
Yeah, look, I agree. The biggest thing for me with the Bears in particular are the coordinators, and I think we've seen Dennis Allen get hired as the defensive coordinator. I think as a D coordinator, I think that's a home run hire. Dennis Allen as a defensive coordinator, he has proven to be great. So, and I think you want, and to get someone who's been a head coach as a coordinator for you, as a first-time head coach, is huge. Even though he wasn't a great head coach, he still knows a lot of things.
Stints,
yeah.
I'm just concerned whether Ben Johnson's going to stick to being a head coach, or is he just going to go on, whether he's going to stick to being an offensive coordinator, or he's going to make sure he's both a head coach and keep both sides of the ball.
Yeah, well, listen, Chris, we will analyse all of this in the weeks to come, but we do have to go. That is all we have time for today. Thank you for tuning in to Priceless Takes episode 69. Make sure to follow us on our social media platforms. Instagram and TikTok will both be in the description. Chris, thank you for joining me today, and go Eagles, I guess. Didn't think I'd say that
Luka.
in a while.
Fly, Eagles, fly. It's go Birds.
All right. Thank you all for watching Priceless Takes. I'm your host, Luka Price, and we will see you next time.